So we're doing a 5-week series on Jewish home. This is the first time we like shortened the series to 5 weeks, which is really nice because it used to be 7. So we're doing 5 weeks. We're going to start with an intro to what the Jewish home is and why it's so important. And then we'll follow up with like mezuzah, kosher, Shabbos, and inviting guests to your house. And by the time you get out of this class, you will be very Jewy. You'll be like dropping like, oh, that's not kosher, right? Okay. And actually, I'm doing this with you because we just moved into a new home. So like, we just did the mezuzahs, and like, we're still in the middle of like making our kitchen kosher. I'm a little nervous because my babysitter is Jamaican, and like, she's gonna make my whole kitchen not kosher. So that's why I'm like, whatever. I don't have to like kosher it yet. Like, so we're doing it slowly. I actually just did my oven last night, so I'm in this process with you. So before we start, I want to introduce to you this concept of the Jewish home and to understand the beauty of what a home is. So it goes like this. I'm going to start with like 10 questions, and then they all, at some point, they'll all make sense. In the beginning, they're not going to make sense. Maybe I'll shorten the list if we get a little bored. And then you'll see how they all tie into this concept and the mystery of a Jewish home. So question number 1 is, what is a midlife crisis? See, now I'm going to get in trouble because my father-in-law is in the middle of having one. He comes home like every day, like one day he like brings home a treadmill, an elliptical, a whole like weight system. I'm not joking. 2 years ago, he brought home a Range Rover. One day, my mother-in-law's like, where are you getting this from? Like, what is going on? Like, what is the deal with the midlife crisis? Like, all of a sudden, like everything is moving along fine. And then like one day in your life, it's like, boom. Like everything is changing. Like, why is that happening at that point in your life? And why didn't it happen 10 years earlier? So question is, what is the point of you having a midlife crisis, and why does it happen then? Second question, what is the miracle of the Jewish survival? The fact that the Jewish people are still here today. I'm sure you've heard this plenty of times. We've heard it from Mark Twain, right? Like, what is the secret to the Jews' immortality? How are we living forever? And by the way, that's like a way bigger miracle than like the splitting of the sea and like the fact that we left Egypt, and we celebrate that every single year. What is the idea behind the Jewish survival, and how are we still here today? It's an unbelievable miracle. Third question, what is humility? Right? You're going to like start praying next week on Rosh Hashanah. And if you look through the prayers, it's like, I am dust and earth, and my body will go back to dust and earth. And we're like praying like a whole day, bowing down, making God our king. Like, if we're asking God to like save us and like give us another year, like, shouldn't we be saying like we're worth something? Like, why we're saying I'm worthless, but give me another chance, right? So what the concept of humility doesn't really even make sense with Judaism. Like, we believe in self-esteem, and it's a mitzvah, by the way, to have self-esteem. So what is the concept of humility, and where does it fit in with Jewish life? I don't even know what question we're up to. Question number 4, what is depression? Okay, depression, right? We hear this a lot. People are very depressed lately. What is this idea of depression? And then like people are like, nah, it's just in your head. And I'm like, in your head is the worst place to be depressed. Like, if I'm depressed in my foot, that's okay. But like, I don't even know what that means, but like, maybe if I had like bunion surgery, I'd be depressed in my foot. But like, being depressed in your head, or like that thought is just in your head, is probably the worst place to have depression. So that's question number 4. And like, well, I'll just like go on this depression idea a little bit more. Like, you get to a point, like if any of you know somebody who's like clinically depressed, like you're at the point where you cannot get out of bed. You can't make a phone call. You can't even talk to people because it's so hard. What is that concept when it gets so heavy that you can't do anything anymore? Question number 5, what is death? What is death? It's if you say that something is alive and then it dies, it's really an oxymoron, because something that is living should always be living. It can't go one day from living to being dead. Actually, my BlackBerry is dead because I dropped it in the toilet, but that's another story. That's very sad, but that's dead. But like, how can something go from being alive to being dead? Like, how can salt go bad? Like, how could something that is alive and has potential life go from alive to being dead? So that's my question. If something is dead, it's dead. If something is alive, it is alive. Okay, here's another question. You may have experienced this in your life, or maybe on a JEC trip. If somebody would fall down a flight of steps, okay, a normal person would get to the bottom of the steps, the flight of steps, and like, call a doctor, or be like, is there a doctor on this trip? Or is there a doctor in the room? Or like, call yourself an ambulance. But what happens if you're drunk and you fall down a flight of steps? You just like get up and continue walking, right? Or like you probably don't realize till the next morning and you look at your phone, you're like, what happened here, right? Or you wake up 6 hours later and you're like, no clue what happened. When you're drunk, all of a sudden it just like, it seems okay. So what is that? Why is that? Okay, so there's a few more questions, but I see we're just gonna, we have the idea. So let's continue a little bit and try to be able to answer these questions. So when God created this world, before he created us and any life, he created something called the existence of the world. So now we're gonna have two things that are parallel. He created existence, and then he created the life of the world. In order for something to live, it has to exist first, correct, right? So first God worked on, he created the existence, and then he created the life. Now what's the difference between existence and life? What does it mean that something exists? This thing over here exists. What does that mean?
It's there.
It's there. It takes up space. It's here. It's matter, right? Like I'm not going to tell you it's a piece of wood. When you're in school, you learn it's a bunch of little atoms, like together, right? It takes up space. In order for something to exist, it has to take up space. So we have a lot of things that take up space, right? We have water takes up space. Stones take up space. Tables, chairs, they all take up space. But not only physical things take up space. Think about it like this. Thoughts take up space also. If I have something going on in my head, it takes up space, okay? So on Sunday, I was driving home from my parents in Brooklyn with 3 kids. I ran over something on the highway. I didn't have one, not 2. I had 3 flat tires. 3 flat tires. I told you this, right? 3. It was like out of control. I'm like on the side of the road. I was telling Joanna the other day, like Ozzy was like sticking his head out the window and there's like trucks flying by and like all I could think about is like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even think to call my mouth because all I'm thinking about are my flat tires. So that thought was taking up space in my head and I couldn't think of anything. When you're at work and you're thinking about something, you get no work done because you're thinking about something. So it's not only physical things that take up space, it's thoughts and also it's emotions. Emotions take up space. Like, come on, how many guys can you date at once? Like, it takes up, right? It takes up space in your heart. Or like, for example, at weddings, like people are crying. Why? Because their emotions are spilling over, right? Like, my daughter yells, like, why are you crying? Like, we're happy. And I'm like, I know, I'm so happy, so I'm crying. Because my emotion is overflowing. Like, I cannot control it. I have no room for other emotions. So physical things, thoughts, all these things, emotions, they take up space. They are there. Now, that's existence. Now, what does life mean? What does it mean that something lives? So something, when it comes to life, it has various existences. Think about it like this. The fire, right? Fire exists, it's here, takes up space, but it also has a purpose. It's the contribution, the life of the fire is the contribution it does to this world. So what does fire do? It gives light, warmth, destroys things, like in Israel, when they want to get rid of garbage, they just light it on fire, right? Fire can destroy, fire can give light, fire can make you warm, all these things. Water, right? Water exists, takes up half of our world and more than half of our body, but what is the purpose of water? To hydrate, right? Or to plant things, right? In order for things to grow, you need water. So water has an existence and it has a life. Stones, right? Let's say like mountains, whatever it is, they have existence. They take up a lot of space, but they also have a purpose. Maybe stone space are minimal, like maybe their life is minimal, but like they create weight, they can destroy things, they can crush things, resistance to movement, things like that. Okay, but the problem is, us as humans, we have 2 things going on at once. We exist and we also live. Okay? We have 2 things going on. We have the fact that we exist and we're here, but we also have a purpose in our life, which is to live. So when you guys, okay, for example, let's say this is my space, right? If you guys weren't here, this would be like the best walk-in closet ever. Like, I can put my shoes on the shelf over here and I can hang my clothing on that bar over there. But the fact that you guys came into my space, my existence, I hate you for that. I mean, I really don't hate you, but I do because I can make such good use out of this space. But then again, I love you because For my life, you're good, because talking to an empty room is like so boring. So on one hand, you're cramping my existence, okay? You're taking up my space, but you're making my life so good. And the ultimate example of this is marriage, okay? So for those of you who met my husband, he's a really nice guy, but what I must have been thinking was like, oh, of all the guys that I've ever met, I choose you to ruin my existence. Like, not in a bad way, but like, I love you for that, but you're cramping my existence. Like, I have half the amount of closet space now. And like, you leave your shoes all over the room. He really doesn't because he's OCD. But if he was a messy person, like, I would be like, that's it. You're ruining my existence. But then again, you give so much to my life. You make my life a much happier place. My existence, it's hard for my existence, but for my life, you make me happy. And if we saying the ultimate example in relationships is with a marriage, the ultimate example with a woman is, for example, when she's pregnant. If you think about it, like a woman who's pregnant, she can't eat what she wants, she can't sleep when she wants, she has to go to the bathroom every 5 minutes, right? She can't smoke what she wants. I mean, she shouldn't be smoking, but if she was, like, she can't do any of that stuff because that baby is literally in her space. But then again, she's most alive then. She's creating life. She's not only alive, she is creating life. So the existence is at its harshest point, but her life is, she's never been so alive. So the existence, by the way, is nothing really to be proud of, like our existence. So let's say we have existence over here and we have life over here. What can we put on the existence list? What allows us to exist, to be? Food, perfect example. Food, sleep, job, work, money, right? All these things allow us to exist, but do I want that to be what defines me as a person? I'm not sure. So we have to figure it out. So like existence, if you think about it, has a lot of demands, right? If eating, sleeping, going to the gym, schlepping to work, waking up in the morning, setting an alarm, everything, existence is kind of a burden, right? I mean, not in a bad way, like we have to do it. We're not shunning physicality and like anything that has to do with our existence, but we're just saying it has a lot of demands on us. We have to carry it around. When I come from work, when I come here, I go to the back room and I go to sleep for a half hour, not because I want to, but my existence is forcing me. There's really nice cozy couches back there. My existence is forcing me to do it. So existence has a lot of demands and it weighs me down. On the other hand, life carries me. So existence bogs me down, makes it annoying, at some points makes life annoying, but my life is what carries me. So now here we go. This is where we're going to start to get to, you're like, well, what does this have to do with the Jewish home? So this is where I'm going to start a little bit to plug the idea of this Jewish home. So in the Jewish home, okay, we'll talk about it, why the Jewish home, but in a home is the space that's created by existence, but where life lives, where life exists, where your life exists, because you need to have the outside frame, the existence, but that's where life happens. So let's try to take a look at some of the answers, right? We asked like a million questions, or like, when is she going to answer them? So let's try to see some of the answers and see how it fits into the idea of a Jewish home. So the question number one was the midlife crisis, right? Remember back then? Okay. So the midlife crisis is saying that your life could be going along just fine for 50 years, right? I mean, life shouldn't be 50. It should be like 65, okay? So your life can be going along just fine, and all of a sudden you hit one day and it's like, boom, like, oh, I need to change everything. Why is that? Because what happens up until 65? What are you working on? You're moving up in your career, you've gotten a job, you have a family, you have children, you have a car, you have a house, you have a white picket fence. You've been working on your existence for so long. You've been creating this perfect existence life. And everything is running smoothly. And by that point, at 65 or whatever it is, at 50, whenever you hit that point, it's not gonna get that much better. Like, I mean, maybe you hear stories of like 60-year-olds and 70-year-olds who became billionaires, but at some point, it's gonna start to slow down. And then you wake up one morning and you look at the person you're married to and you're like, why am I married to you, right? And like, you get a red convertible and you start driving away with like a beautiful blonde. Because all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, my existence, everything is here in place, but what am I living for? why am I alive? What is my life for? So then we start to like rationalize and make up reasons of why we're here. And then you're like, wait, I didn't live my life. So then you have to like do everything that you've never done before in your life and like go skydiving. The idea is you were not living before. You were only existing. Okay, second question. Why are the Jewish people still here? It's an unbelievable miracle. How are we still here? So it goes like this. All the other nations that ever came to this world, let's take Rome, for example, right? Rome, they were very busy living their life, making sure that like the sun does not set on their empire. They were building like bridges and castles. I don't know if they were building castles. I don't know if they had castles in Rome, but like they were just like building like empires. They were so busy. They were building up their army to make sure that their existence over here would last forever. Yet they are no longer around. And that happened with all the other nations. Babylon and Persia and Greece, they were so busy. And by the way, if you do go back to Greece, you can see some of their existence is still standing, right? The buildings and like you see some of the columns, some statues. So their existence lives, but like very, very, very small. Now what happened with the Jewish people? Moses gets up, right? Moshe tells them, he's like, you, the Jewish people, let me tell you a little bit what's gonna happen in your life. So it goes like this. You're gonna become a nation, you're gonna be very big. And then, you know, you're not gonna have a land for a very long time. You're gonna have to conquer it. And then when you conquer it, you know, the Babylonians are gonna come and they're gonna destroy your temple and they're gonna take you out. And then you're gonna go back and then you're gonna build another temple. And then the Romans are gonna come and they're gonna destroy you and they're gonna disperse you all over. And then the Spanish people, they're gonna kick you out. And everyone's like, okay, Moshe, like, is there a point to all of this? And he says, yes, there is a point. You will never have a great existence. You will never be big. You will never have a lot of people, right? Our numbers are so small. If you think about it, by the way, it's true because Israel has the teeniest existence. I'm like, Israel's like the size of Rhode Island. Like, I mean, I love Rhode Island, but like, it's a small state. Israel, is anybody from Rhode Island? No. Okay, no, I hope not. Wait, I was going to ask a really embarrassing question. I'm like, where's Boston? I wasn't going to do that. So like Israel, if you think about it, has no existence. But so what Moshe was telling them is like, you're never going to have a big existence. So get living. Start living. Live your life. You're not going to exist on the map. You're barely going to be there. At one point, we didn't have the state of Israel up until 1948. You're not going to be there. Your existence is going to be minimal. So start living. Get with it. Get with that life program. Start it. And the Jewish people said, hey, you're right. And if you think about it, the time when the Jewish people's existence was being crushed, that's when they lived the most. Like, if you think about, like when the Talmud was written was when the Jews were in Babylon. When the greatest of our rabbis were like killed out, we were sent to Babylon, and that's when we wrote the Talmud. The book that we use today that's lining those bookshelves over there was written when our existence was completely crushed. It was barely there, yet we were most alive. So like think of that pregnant woman who's like going to the bathroom every 2 minutes, but her life, she's never been so alive. So that's what the secret of the Jewish people is, that all the other nations were so focused on their existence. All they wanted to do was exist. They didn't realize that they needed to live. Question number 3 was the idea of humility, the concept of humility, where we're always saying, I'm nothing, I'm dust and earth, right? So it goes like this. We believe that every moment of life is so valued, like so important, that when we say we're insignificant, when we bow down, when we pray to God, by the way, when like on Rosh Hashanah, everyone's like praying and bowing down to God, we're saying we're insignificant. Make my existence insignificant so that I can live. By the way, when you pray, I just learned this most amazing thing. When you bow down, you say Baruch Atah, and then when you say God's name, Hashem, you stand up. Why? This is so amazing. I just learned this Monday night, because to the degree that I lower myself to you and I put down my existence, that's the degree that God can come into my life. So I need to lower myself in my existence so that I can bring you into my life. So when we pray, when we say God's name, we're not like splat out on the floor. Like we're not like, I don't know if you've seen like the Muslims in Israel, like the way they pray, they're like on the floor all the time. We don't believe like that. We just do a little bow. We're not like you know, like out there, like praying to God. We do a little bow, but as soon as we say God's name, we stand up because that's the degree that he can come into my life and I can now live. So the idea is, as a human, like I try to rationalize my existence. Like I'm gonna make up excuses why I can buy so many shoes because like, if you think about it, it is a little embarrassing how much we take care of our existence. I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm in the same boat. I'm always like, another pair of shoes, another dress, right? And then I hide things in the back of my trunk so he doesn't see it. And then I like take it out slowly and he's like, oh, what is that? I'm like, it's not new, it's like, whatever. It's so old, like you never saw this? I've worn this like a million times. And he's like, oh. I'm like, she's like, Faigy, it still has a tag on it. And I'm like, sorry. Or like, right? So I want to rationalize my existence. And humility is we're putting down our existence so that I can say, that's the reason I live. So I'll make nice excuses and I'll be like, I bought that beautiful dress so I can wear it at Shabbat, at dinner, right? That is why I am rationalizing my existence. That's okay. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe your therapist would be like, that is not okay. Or like, if you think about it, like you say, I need food, I need sleep, I need all these things so that I can live. You hear stories of like these great rabbis, like you'll hear like they were all on diets. By the way, they're like the most famous rabbi, the Rambam, right? Like Maimonides, he was on like a very, very strict diet. And it says that he used to only eat like whole wheat flour. So he was with the program, right? So the idea where the reason I exercise and the reason I do all my things that I do is so that I can live a better life. So like you hear stories of great rabbis who sleep so little. They sleep like 3 or 4 hours a night because they say, that's all I need. I don't want to waste my life existing. I want to live. So they go to sleep really late at night. They're studying Torah till late at night, wake up early in the morning to go study more Torah. They don't eat a lot. They don't have time to eat. You know when like you're busy at work and like you're on a project, like you just don't sleep, you don't eat, and like you're like, how did I get there? Like how am I back at work today? Like it doesn't even make sense. It's because you're so busy taking care of your life. Like I always give the example like of camp, like when it's color war. And like, color war, right? I'm talking to like the 2 biggest campers here. I'm a huge camper also. So like camp is like, how did you stay up a whole night? Like how could you stay up a whole night painting this banner for color war? Like who really cares about the color war? And I like to wear color war, so it's very important to me. But the idea where like you go on and you don't even realize that you're not even existing. You're like, how am I up? How did I do this? So the idea is that you can crush that at one point, you can put that existence to the side so that you can live. And that's the concept of humility. Yeah, sure.
How do people interpret like the Holocaust and how that happened with existing and living and sorry.
No, can you explain the question a little bit more?
Like by I guess looking back and seeing that how many people died and how our existence
was so crushed. So that is a very good question. She asked, I'll repeat it. She asked the question of like, how can you explain the Holocaust where people where our existence was crushed? I have to say that the life that has grown in America after World War II is unbelievable. I mean, the Jewish life in America flourished since the end of the war. Like it really has, like the amount of like rabbis that have like migrated to America like would have never happened. Like Jewish life was in Europe. Like yes, there were people like some like my cousins, their grandparents, and everything were like 5th generation like New Yorkers. So there were people who were here before, but the life totally expanded somewhere else. But even though our existence at that point was crushed and like I'll give you a little example. This is going off topic, but in the summer there was, I don't know if you know, there was like this gathering of like 90,000 Jews at MetLife Stadium, right? MetLife, Meadowlands. You were there?
I was there.
You were there? Oh, so there was an unbelievable. Oh. There was an unbelievable gathering. This is totally off topic, but I'll just say it because it has to do with you. There was an unbelievable gathering of 92,000 Jewish people. They came there to celebrate the cycle of studying the Torah. So there's a concept called Daf Hayomi, which means 1 page a day, because the Talmud has a lot of pages. So one rabbi instituted this idea. If you study 1 page of Torah, Talmud a day, in 7.5 years, you'll finish the cycle. So it's a very long, it's like 7.5 years. Whoa, but there's and also, not only do you only do 1 page a day, but all the Jewish people do that same page a day. So it's like a very powerful feeling. Like we're all studying, Jews all over the world are all studying the same page. So what happened was there was this so every 7.5 years, sometimes it's in the winter, sometimes in the summer, there's a gathering of these Jewish people. And like last 7.5 years was like in Madison Square Garden and Nassau Coliseum. And then 6 years ago, they booked MetLife because they knew that there was going to be so many Jewish people. So when I was sitting there with like 92,000 other Jews, I was sitting there, I'm like, okay, this is probably the closest thing to what it was like at Mount Sinai. Like, it's unbelievable. And then I started thinking, I'm like, wow, 90,000 people come here for like a football game, and like we're here like for, like, I'm not a sports fan, so I know some of you are, but so for me it was like a very hard concept. But then one of the great rabbis, he was speaking, and he said that, he asked if there were any Holocaust survivors there. And my grandfather was there, and he's 94, and he survived like Auschwitz, and he was there. And he said, take a look around this stadium. And by the way, go home tonight and Google it, and you'll see a picture. It was like unbelievable. It was like a sea of black and white, and then like the girls were on top, so it was like speckled with colors. And the people, it was unbelievable. For those of you who were in Poland and Prague with Rabbi Lawrence, he has a little YouTube video of the people dancing, because at one point they were dancing. They're all like standing in their seats, just going like this. But and this rabbi said that, take a look around this stadium. The Nazis killed 60 stadiums filled with this. And look at where we are today. Like 60 stadiums of this amount of Jewish people, and we're still here today. They may have crushed our existence, but I mean, our life and like continuing of studying Torah is unbelievable. So when I heard that, it like blew my mind. But I don't know if I can answer you, but the idea that we're still living today and we'll never have a big existence. Never, never. Okay, so sorry. So let's go back to the fourth question. Fourth question was, what's up with depression? Okay, so let's try to understand it. Now that we have this idea of existence and life, what happens when a person is depressed, right? Clinical depression, what is it? It's a real problem. But what happens is, because the weight of our existence is already heavy, it is schlepping in the morning, getting up, I know, like doing the whole thing, going to work, coming home, then coming to classes, right? Everything, that existence already weighs me down. The fact that I need to eat, and I need to sleep, and I need to shop for food, and I need to get clothing, and all those things is already heavy. Imagine, okay, this is the head of a depressed person. What happens is you agonize so much about the heaviness of your existence that you literally cannot get out of bed. Remember how we said existence is a burden. Life carries you. You are so heavy right now. You cannot make a phone call. You cannot talk to people. You are all you care about is your existence. It's a very, very, very scary state. So what do they say? What do the therapists tell you? They tell you, stop existing and start living. And how do you do that? So like the classic example of like a depressed person is like, I have no purpose in this life. What am I here for? Why are we here for? How am I even talking to you? I don't know how words are coming out of my mouth, right? The idea is they tell them like, go do some volunteer work. Like, get out there. Give your life a purpose, because that's all. I mean, this is not all the answers to depression. Sometimes you need a little, Prozac. But like, the idea is a lot of people, they'll send them to like go do volunteer work, or like the classic example of like charity, right? Like of tzedakah, right? We're not going to discuss tzedakah in our class this semester, but the idea of tzedakah is like, I have $1. That's my existence. I'm giving it to you. Now you have $1. So I gave up from my existence to make your existence better. And what do I get out of it? I get life. Okay, now I'm $1 poorer, but I got life from it. I got so much more out of it. So when people go out and they volunteer and they do all this work, and it makes them, as much as they're giving up their time, they're getting so much more out of it. I always say this, like people give and they end up getting so much more. That's what happens. That's the idea of love, right? Okay, so I want to give to you so that your existence can be better, so that ultimately I will live more. So this, by the way, goes with Shabbos. This is the idea behind Shabbos. We're going to do Shabbos in 2 weeks, but maybe in 3 weeks, I'm not sure. But the idea of Shabbos, this is very, very true with Shabbos. What happens on Shabbos? 6 days I'm working, 7 days I stop working. And what kind of work am I not allowed to do? I'm not allowed to do any labor, right? Not physical labor, because I could do physical labor. I can schlep a bookcase up and down the steps and not desecrate the Shabbos. Shabbos, I'm not allowed to do any work. What work is forbidden? Productive labor. So I can't turn the light on Shabbat. I can't turn the AC on. I can't cook. I can't bake. I cannot do anything to make my existence better. All I'm doing on Shabbos is living. I am not doing anything. I'm not touching my phone. I'm not answering emails. I'm not doing anything for my existence. All I'm doing is lighting the candles, sitting on the couch, and watching Yael jump rope, and not like thinking about anything else. Like, seriously, I don't have to be worried that she's gonna be like, "Ma, put down your phone," or like, "Stop texting," or, you know, like doing all these things. And by the way, for my kids also, like, they're like so busy with, like, Yael is amazing at Temple Run. You should see her. She's like amazing. And like on Shabbos, all she's doing is like enjoying her life, running around, living life. And what happens is we're stuck in such a cycle of everything going, everything existing and making existing. We're bound to have a midlife crisis at like 30. Like, it's going to happen to us. We're just going to break down. So now there's a concept of a mitzvah, the mitzvah of honoring your parents. So like, what's up with honoring your parents, and like, why is it so hard? We'll talk about it, why it's so hard. But honoring your parents, it says, if you honor your mother and father, you shall live a long life, okay? I'm like, yes, obviously, if I honor my parents, I'm gonna live forever, because like, it's the hardest thing to do. But the idea of honoring my parents is very, very hard, but I will get life out of it. So it's similar to this idea of tzedakah, of like giving from my existence to make your existence better so that I will live. But it goes like this. So like, I don't know if you know, but my husband is like the oldest of 11. So at one point, there's always a teenager. There's always somebody in their like teenage years. So then I'm like, what is up with teenagers? Like, seriously, like they are just like mad at the world. Like, everything is like a huge problem. Like, how come you can't let me have a sleepover? All my friends are doing it. Give me the keys to the car. I'm gonna like, you know, like all these things, like everything is like just so messy with teenagers. So I look, Elimelech has one of his brothers who's actually now married, but when I first met Elimelech and I was like introduced to his family, like he was a teenager and he was like literally like sneaking out the window every single night. Like, he was up to something, he like totaled the car, like not once but twice. Like, he was just such a mess. And like now he's married and he has a kid and he's like studying Torah and like it's all like good. And I'm like, what happened in that time that he was so angry? Like, they're so, I mean, not even angry, they're just like moody. And I think like sometimes, like, why are they so moody? Like, they have everything. They have like, the parents are taking care of them, they're sending them to school, they're paying for their food. Like, what could be so hard? Like, everyone's their existence is being taken care of for them, right? Think about it. I mean, hopefully you all had good parents. At least they were good to you when you were in like, you know, then you went off to college and whatever. But like, while you were in high school, like, they were taking care of you for most, like, you know, picking you up from school, dropping you off, everything. Your existence was being taken care of, but it was being run by somebody else. So what happens is your parents are in your existence. They are bothering you. They're in your space. I remember when I was 14 and I had a birthday party for a really good friend of mine who lived across the street. And my parents knew her parents, who were like family friends. So like my parents walked over to the birthday party. And like when you're 14 and like your parents walk into a birthday party, like that is the most uncool thing ever. And I remember feeling, I don't know why. Like now I'm like, if my mom would come here, I would not care. But as soon as I saw my parents walk into the room, I was like, I want to like the ground to swallow me. Like, this is so embarrassing. And I remember this because my parents were like very hurt and they came over to me and they're like, Faigy, why were you talking to us? And I'm like, why weren't I talking to you? Like, you walked into like my friend's birthday party. Like, that is so embarrassing. And like, that was very uncool of you. But like, now I think about it, I'm like, okay, fine. Like, they were giving me everything. Like, they were doing everything for me. And by the way, it's not only for teenagers, it's like for little kids. Like, I was in Yael's room the other night and I was like sitting on her bed to read a book and she's like, oh, you're making my bed hot. You know, like when you sit on it. It gets like so annoying. So she's like, you're sitting on, I'm like, your bed? I'm like, when did you go to work and like get money and buy this bed? Like, that's my bed. And then I'm like, I am letting you sleep on my bed. And she's like, well, wait, mommy, like, all I said was you're making my bed hot. She was like, but then I started thinking like, I'm like, you know what? If you keep quiet, I'll let you sleep on this bed. Like, I don't want justice. I'm like, I don't want justice. I just want quiet. Like, I will stay here. And the idea were like, yes, she never went to work. And like, no, it's not her bed, but her whole life is me taking care of my existence. I'm in your space. Imagine like having someone in your space all the time. That is the most uncomfortable feeling. So what happens is, how do I honor my parents? I give up from my existence to my parents. And I honor them, and I stand up for them, and I greet them, and I don't embarrass them when they walk into my friend's birthday party. Then I get life. But not only figuratively, do I get life, but literally the Torah says, if you honor your parents, if you give up from your existence, you will have long life. Okay, so it goes like this. I'm giving you a million examples of existence and life, but I just want you to be able to clearly see the difference between existence and life. Are we all on the same page? Yeah? I mean, if you want, I can go to the other questions, but like this. If I allow my parents or whatever it is that's coming into my life to diminish my existence, or my husband, whatever it is, to diminish my existence and honoring them and giving them the respect, I will then gain life. If you think about it, before you take a drink, right, what do we say? What do Jewish people say? We do a lot on Friday night. L'chaim, right? L'chaim, to life. Okay, this, by the way, will get you thinking when people wear chai necklaces. You'll have a deeper understanding of chai, of life. What am I saying, to life? Am I scared that this is going to be really dangerous? To life, right? I actually had my first drink in Israel of the one that lights up. I don't know what it was. And I was a little scared. Yes, I was like, wow, l'chaim. I'm going to... But really, I should say l'chaim before I go ziplining or skydiving or, right? I should be I hope I'm still alive after this. Am I that nervous after a drink that I'm scared that I'm not going to live? So the idea is like this. No, I'm not so scared when I take a drink. But what happens to you when you take a drink? You diminish some of your existence, okay? And what happens is I'm saying a prayer. That's really what it is, a little prayer. L'chaim, to life. I am giving up my existence so that I can live a little bit. And you know this is true because when you are drunk and you fall down the steps, you don't even take care of your existence. You don't feel your existence. You're loosening up your existence so that you can live. Elimelech and I are very busy furnishing our house, and we're very worried about our existence of our house. And we go to a store and we look at the couch and we're like, oh, so this is a nice couch, and we're always trying it out. We're like, oh, how many people can fit on this? So the salesman's like, well, you could fit 4 sober people comfortably, but 9 drunk people. And then I was like, wait, what happens when all those 9 drunk people sober up at the same time? But that's because when you're drunk, you don't necessarily, you diminished your existence. You fall down the steps, you don't feel it. Or when drunk people talk to you, they don't know the 4-foot rule of communication, right? They're in your face and you're like, whoa, you're in my space. But drunk people don't know space. They don't know existence. They don't sense that. They can't feel it. So when I drink, by the way, you should never drink when you're depressed, because what happens? It just gets worse, right? You just get more depressed. So if you notice, Jewish people only drink in times of happiness, like on Purim, when we're supposed to be the happiest, or on Sukkot. By the way, there's a holiday on Sukkot, Simchat Torah, when we dance with the Torah. You're supposed to drink then. It says in Judaism, no Jewish meal, no Shabbat meal, is complete without meat or wine. You're supposed to be happy when you drink, because when you're happy, you say, okay, I'm just going to let go of my existence, of everything that bogs me down, right? On Shabbat, we're supposed to drink. I don't know if you saw my husband this Friday night, but yeah, I was I'm married to the drunk man. No, he wasn't drunk, but the idea where you loosen up because a whole, I don't know, maybe he was. Okay. Sorry. Note, I should not let him watch this video. The idea where I loosen my existence so that I can enjoy my life, that's what I want to enjoy. That's why you're supposed to drink when you're happy. Okay, so the idea this. A Jewish home is a place, yes, of existence, because it has to have the 4 walls, and you have to have a bathroom, and you have to have a bedroom, and you have to have a kitchen, everything. It needs to exist. The question is, how do you live in that home? So the problem is that this is my problem as well. We teach, the way that we are raised, and the way that I continue to raise my children is wrong. Because what I do is, you need to go to school, you need to get good grades so that you can go to college, so you can get a good job, so you can make good money, so you can get a car that you want. And I'm like, wait a second. I'm only letting them do all these things in the home so that they can exist. And then I'm like, never tell a lie. Why? Because no one's going to believe you anymore, and that's going to ruin you forever, and that's going to ruin your existence, the way you look for other people. So the problem is we're stuck in this world that is so focused on existence that we don't know how to properly live. like brush your teeth so that like strangers like, like, or we say, let's say brush your teeth, avoid strangers, like do all these things. But then we're like, only brush your teeth so you don't have bad breath so that people won't be embarrassed of you. We don't teach them the real reason for brushing your teeth, but I don't really know what whatever, for cavities and all these things. But like, I know, yeah, I had a root canal already, so it's really bad. So the idea, or like we say, I'm like, you better share your toys with that boy over there because, if you share with him, he has really good toys. So like, then you go to your house. But like, I don't explain to her the real reason why you need to share your toys. We need to explain to them, to the children, and to ourselves, we need to teach ourselves that you have to learn what your purpose of your existence for and what your life is. And the purpose of your existence is only to live. And that, by the way, is such a great way to rationalize things, but also it will create a magnificent existence, an unbelievable, beautiful existence by creating that in the home. So now the Jewish home is, I'm in the middle of creating it also. Like, yes, I'm married 7 years, but now having a home, I feel like I'm ready to like start it. So like you guys are on this journey, like I said, but you need to create a world that is a home that lives, that doesn't just exist. And we are all going to do it together, like this. This is the first time I'm teaching this semester, and I usually do strong Jewish women, and I do history. And when they came around, they're like, oh, Faigy, like, okay, we're sitting at a staff meeting, like, what are you going to teach? And I'm like, oh, maybe I could do like waking up Jewish. I was just like naming out things that I've done before because it's easy for me. And I'm like, oh, I prepared this already and we could do it. And then they're like, oh, why don't you do the Jewish home? And I'm like, Jewish home? I'm like, that's so boring. Everybody knows what kosher is, and everybody knows what a mezuzah is, and everybody knows what Shabbos is. Like, they all heard it. Like, everybody went at some point and heard a class on Shabbos or kosher. And then I was like, no, you can make it fun. And I'm like, okay, that's easy for you to say. But then I started thinking, like, what makes you Jewish? And this is an idea that I heard one time when I was in Israel from one of my amazing teachers. And she said like this: what makes a Christian a good Christian? Okay, my babysitter, Sylvine, I love her. She's Jamaican, and she was, she sings about Jesus all day. And I told somebody this is a problem. Like, my Ozzy's like skipping to the bathroom. He's like, oh, Jesus. And I'm like, that is not going to go well at his yeshiva that he starts in a month. So I went over to her and I'm like, oh, Sylvine, like, I know, like, I don't want to, like, I love your religion, and like, I'm so happy that you're religious, and like, and I'm just like, we just like, if you could like curb the Jesus, because like we don't believe in him. And she's like, oh, she's like, Jesus is a Jew. And I'm like, you're right, but like he converted to this whole other thing, But like, and she was like, oh my gosh, she felt so bad. But what makes her religious? She goes to church, okay? Like, going to church makes her religious. Leaving the home and going out and singing her songs, and like she does like the whole gospel thing, and she's awesome. But like, that is what makes her religious. What makes a Jewish person religious? Not going out and not going necessarily to church, because I could count on my 10 fingers that I went to shul maybe 10 times this year. What makes me Jewish? The more I'm in touch with my Judaism, the more I turn in and I go into the inside, the home. The more secular somebody is, the more that their Judaism is spent outside the home. For example, at the temple is where you're Jewish. You hear the organ and you drive home. But the more you are religious, the more your home is religious. Your home is kosher. Your home, you have Shabbat. You have a mezuzah hanging on your door. You invite people into your home. That is what makes your home Jewish. Now, it doesn't have to be back at home wherever you live. This is why I got so excited to do this class, because it's like, we're all here. Like, by the way, the JC is my Jewish home. Like, I practice it here. I mean, no, when I go home, I also do it, but this is where I'm most Jewy, because this is where I learn and I prepare and I can teach. But the idea is, what makes my home internal? I'm like, this is so exciting. Like, we can all take this home. Like, when I have that mezuzah hanging on my door, and when I make the rest of my kitchen kosher, whatever I do to my home to make it more Jewish, that's me. I own it. It's me now. So I'm like, oh, yes, this Jewish home semester could be so amazing, especially, by the way, from a woman's perspective, because we are the ones who make the home Jewish. The guys can go out and they can be rabbis and do their thing, but like, when it comes down to the food and I'm cooking it, like, Aimach has no clue if it's kosher or not. It's up to me. So then I'm thinking, wow, like, what makes the Jewish home a Jewish woman, a Jewish girl? And if you think about it, the same way, like I said, with honoring your parents, that literally you end up getting life, right? Like, if you, it's not just, oh, you honor your parents, you have a long life. No, you honor your parents, you do live a long life. So too, figuratively with women, what makes you Jewish? a woman, the one who carries you. That's who makes you Jewish. So too, your home is a microcosm of your world. That is what makes you Jewish. So a Jewish home is a magnificent existence of what Jewish life is supposed to be. So you bring it home. Now, like, sometimes, like, I walk into my house and I'm like, turn the AC on. I'm like, I literally, the second I get home, I like strip. I'm like, oh my God, I take off my wig. I'm like, you know, I just like, I don't know, also I work in the Bronx. I need to take a shower when I get home. I know, and I'm just like, yeah, like, and that's all for my existence. But then I sit down and like I try to teach my kids good lessons and like be like, don't lie for the right reasons, right? Or whatever it is, that is what makes my home Jewish. Or part of being kosher is that I need to turn the fire on. So like my babysitter, she can cut up all the vegetables and like clean the chicken. But part of it, we'll learn when we do kosher, is I have to turn the oven on. So then I'm like, oh, now I'm living. Now my food is kosher. That's part of it. When you turn your oven on, you make it kosher. So the idea is sometimes I can come home and I do feel deflated and I'm like, this is such a schlep. Like I leave my house at 6 o'clock in the morning. What's the reason? What's the purpose? Why do I do this, right? And we do it. You come home from JC class at night. This is the late night class. This is long. You walk into your house and you're like, you drop your bags and you're like, set your alarm for tomorrow. So we can feel deflated, but the idea is we want to celebrate the value of a home. And how do we do that? By this little things. Like I'm already excited next week to hand out mezuzahs to all of you. So that you can walk into your home and you just made your house that much more Jewish, right? Are you excited? Yeah, Yofi, right? So we're celebrating this value of a home. And what we want to do is we want to offer that to people. So like one of the mitzvahs that we're going to learn about the Jewish home is inviting guests into your home. Because that's what makes you, yes, they're going to make a mess. And it's cramping your existence. And they're going to leave a mess. But then you always have one girl who stays around and cleans up. But the idea is, maybe I'm like far from like what I wanted it to be, but I am so living right now. This is a magnificent existence. So to sum it all up, there's like this famous saying that we say in Judaism, we say, Am Yisrael Chai, right? It's like the one song that everybody knows, it's like Am Yisrael Chai, right? What does that mean? Am Yisrael, the Jewish nation, we are Chai, we are alive. What are we saying? We say, I choose to define myself as a person and as a nation as alive. We live. We choose life over existence. And now I'm like, I should have brought a drink because then I could have been like l'chaim. But like, it's a Wednesday night. Like I'll save it for Shabbos. But the idea, when you say l'chaim, you are curbing your existence in order for you to live. And that is the essence of a Jewish home. Any questions? No? Sorry, I talk really fast sometimes. No, but we're good? Okay.